All right, guys, we're here today with Professor Paul Schmitt, who knows everything about skateboarding, quite literally.
Well, I can't say everything, but I do know a thing or two. I've seen a thing or two over time. I have a perspective of it.
Yeah, so we're interested, first of all, before we even get started talking, what do you guys want to know? What questions do you have about skateboarding, skateboarding history? Please leave it in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. So what I'm interested in is the sort of ebb and flow of the skateboard world.
Okay.
How it started, and then we seem to have these like times where it's like popularity goes really high, and then it crashes.
Right.
And then high, and then crashes. If you can sort of give me a brief,
Yes.
maybe not so brief, I want to know everything.
It's not so brief at all because it's actually based on the first half of the last century.
Yeah.
Where families were born based on wars and recessions.
Yeah.
And there would be these huge cycles of youth, right?
Oh, really?
So skateboarding in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s was a result of those cycles. And a family would have 2 to 6 kids, but nowadays people have their kids in their 30s and they have 1 to 3 kids. We're talking major things that affect the tide of things, right? You know,
that affect everything.
Everything. It affects them building schools and new communities. There's that, right?
Yeah.
And then, so as the ebbs and flows over years, if we look, the first half, it was big swings.
Yeah.
And it became less and less. So that generation swing happens still.
Right.
You know, families are becoming different. People are deciding not to have kids. You know, it's like more of a, it's just change. Society's changing, right?
Right.
So skateboarding follows that to an extent.
Really?
And
okay,
then,
I've never even thought about that before.
Well, it's opportunity, right? If there's a bunch of kids that age, there's a bunch of kids that age. If there aren't, there aren't.
Right.
But then things happen, like in, you know, Back to the Future movie came out in the 80s and it made skateboarding blow up because it was just in a movie and people like, well, that looks fun, that looks interesting. Dad's like, I used to ride on a 2x4.
Yeah.
You know, we used to put our roller skates on a 2x4 and do that.
And it all started from like, that's interesting, that looks fun, this looks like a fun thing to do.
Right.
It's amazing to capture just that feeling, like you were saying, of like, you just step on a board, you roll, it's total freedom.
Yeah,
and you're
total
just
freedom.
Feeling like I can do whatever I want.
Right, but it's your choice.
It's your choice, and that's the important thing. Yeah.
That's the amazing thing, right? So as much as skateboarding can be so technical and looks like so difficult, right? Yeah. That whole base level of just rolling and flowing is not difficult, but it's so joyful.
I think that's the key, is capturing that.
And it's like the reality of doing a trick and doing a gnarly trick on this spot right here, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. What makes that trick look good is that you rolled up to it and that you rolled away from it.
Yeah, that's right.
So just the push and the roll is what makes it work. It's not just the trick, right?
Right. So when was Back to the Future and how did that affect it?
That was, I think, 86. Skateboarding started to have the generational pickup. So in 84, so skateboarding basically had the high in the 60s, 60 to 64.
Yeah.
Then it commercially went away, skateboards weren't made. Then we get to the 70s, 73, the urethane wheel comes out, creates all kinds of excitement, and we're on the boom again. 74 to 79, skateboarding was booming. Then it went down again, and we had 80 to 84 where it was in a really lull.
And you have also, during this time, you have these skate parks that are coming up, like Del Mar.
That's 70s exactly.
Okay.
Late 70s.
And then
Del Mar was around to 70, 88, so it lasted longer. It in Upland or 80.
But it must have been devastating for the
the skate
industry.
parks to close, I mean, we had to go skate ramps in the backyard and build a ramp, right?
And were people like, skateboarding's dead, skateboarding's no longer going to exist? Was it like that, or were they just like,
oh yeah, well people were like, what are you guys still doing? Isn't that over? You know, that's like a hula hoop, it's a fad. I'm like, it's not a fad. And it's like, you know, it wasn't a fad to Tony Hawk, he didn't give up. It wasn't a fad to Steve Caballero, he didn't stop.
Right.
You know, Lance Mountain's still having fun. Right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a fad. You
know?
But people wanted to think that because they see things happen in culture.
That's right.
That we get really big and then they go away.
Sometimes I have people say that to me. You still skateboard? Aaron, you're like 40 years old. What are you doing? I thought skateboarding went away.
Yeah, well, I'm 61 and I never stopped skateboarding since I was 10, right? You know? Nowadays, it's like adults have a permission to pick skateboarding back up where they almost didn't have permission. Society said, no, you're not supposed to do that. You know, the amount of people when I was young, the guys that were just a couple years older than me, they didn't come to the back ramps. They went to college.
Right.
You know, because life told them this is what you're supposed to do. And then, you know, they had a family and they came back to skateboarding 10, 20 years later.
Right.
I'm like, where were you?
Yeah, exactly.
I was living life. I was living life.
So, okay, so then Back to the Future, and then what about further than that? Like, how did things progress?
In our most recent one, it was COVID, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is that people couldn't do things as groups, but you could be an individual on a skateboard and you didn't need much. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of people started skating in the driveway again. And,
Yeah.
you know, skateboarding flourished during COVID.
Yeah.
But then boom and bust always happens. And the reality is that when the supply chain got behind it, all of a sudden it was like, people finally could go back and spend money at a restaurant,
Yeah.
or they could go on a trip where they couldn't. So now they're doing that, right? They're having that piece of life they didn't have.
Yes.
You know? And the reality is they're not wearing product out. I mean, me, I don't wear product out.
Right.
I ride the same board for years. It doesn't matter for me.
It's true.
Where I'm at a skateboarder, I just go to a pool and carve grind and I pump around, and it's like, I don't wear them out.
Right. So you
know?
can ride that skateboard for a very long
Right.
time.
And then people are like, well, you're so lucky. You can have a new skateboard whenever you want it. It's like, I'd rather just skate than put another board together.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
So what about like Tony Hawk video games? What about
well,
like
Tony Hawk video game was a huge thing, right? Like
Yeah.
even in culture today, and someone talks about a trick, and I'm like, well, do you do that trick on a video game?
Yeah.
On a fingerboard or in real life?
Right.
Because all moms around the world know what Ollie is, and it's because a video game, a fingerboard, or riding a skateboard. One
Yeah,
of them.
that is-
My kid's into one of those, right? And,
Yes.
and some people decide that they do all, some don't. Some people are like, oh my gosh, they're fingerboarders, and they understand all the tricks and everything, and the culture and everything. They don't actually skateboard.
Right.
They fingerboard.
And they understand it because of fingerboarding.
Right.
That is weird. I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
I have thought about the Tony Hawk video game.
Yep.
Rodney Mullen did an interview and he talks about our language. We literally have our own language.
Yeah.
Ollie, kickflip, heel flip, inward heel flip. And then he's like, our language started to become commonplace because of the video game.
Yeah, very much.
So
Very much.
interesting. So, okay, so we had Back to the Future and then Tony Hawk video game. Is there any other places where you saw like this really helped boost skateboarding overall?
Well, different things would happen, right? So in media, you
Yeah.
know, when in the 80s, early in the 80s, video cameras were big. They were commercial equipment. There was not prosumer equipment yet.
Right.
In the late 80s, it started to be prosumer equipment. I got a Panasonic SVHS camera. It was this big. It was 10 pounds.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, right? I had a tool. And
You still have footage from that?
yeah.
Oh wow.
Yep. And then we moved on to high 8, and we got a smaller camera now, and that's really what's starting the skater filmer revolution, right?
And this is in 90s.
90.
In the 90s.
Yeah, 90 we had high 8 cameras, and then when we got to DV and went digital, that was I think 97 or 98 or somewhere late 90s.
Wow.
You know, where that became commonplace.
Yeah.
So in 93, I was part of starting 4-on-1 Video magazine.
So how did that happen?
So Steve Douglas, I had this video editing system called Video FX. And
Yeah.
it would let you edit digitally, but you still had to roll the tape at the end, but it would do preview. It had a 2 gigabyte hard drive that cost
Wow.
$10,000.
No way!
200
2 gigs for 10 grand.
256 megs of RAM cost $15,000 back then.
Wow.
But we had enough business success to have those tools, right? And
What were they doing? They were selling the videos
selling
through skate
videos.
shops?
Skate shops, yeah.
And you were making VHS tapes.
Right.
So for those of you who don't know what 411 is, it's a video magazine, and every episode started with openers, and it had this song.
Boxcar band was called Soul was the name of the band.
Yeah.
And he was a salesman at Giant Distribution.
No
in
way.
Ken Wood, and it was his band.
So he's a skater.
He worked at the skateboard company with us.
Okay.
I would say he was more Southern California dude.
Oh, yeah,
Spicoli-like.
okay.
Like he wasn't a core skater per se, but he was part of the culture, right?
And he made this iconic song
And 401 used it and made it iconic, right?
Wow.
You know, and it became the theme song.
for the openers.
Yeah.
Whose idea was the opener? How did
So-
this all happen?
So basically, it was 401 was founded by Josh Freeberg,
Yeah.
Steve Douglas, Chris Ortiz, Andy Howell, and me.
Wow.
And that was the original starting of it. Basically, it was Steve kept on having Josh pull video grabs. So Josh got good with the video system. World would make ads from video grabs.
Yeah.
Because you could get a sequence from anybody, but the quality wasn't very good, right?
Oh.
And Josh is like, it's easier to just make a video than it is to do the video grabs, Steve. Let's just do a video magazine. And then it became, you know, the first thought would it be a giant distribution project for the brands at Giant, and it became, no, we're just going to make it for skateboarding. It's
That's
just
cool.
A media piece, right?
That is cool.
You know, and we really tried to let it be independent.
Right.
But Steve really drove that to happen, you know, and creatively everybody did their pieces. For me, I was the infrastructure guy. I made, you know, the video editing systems work, and did the accounting and made the office happen, and, you know, that type of stuff.
Behind the scenes,
Behind
like
the
making
scenes,
it all
I
work.
didn't make the decisions at all what would happen.
So
you know?
then 4-in-1 Video Magazine progressed. It was very successful. You
Yeah.
guys sold a lot of videos. And
Yeah.
then how did that, why
So
is
at the
you
end,
don't have 4-in-1 now?
like any business, you went through it yourself.
Yes.
With your business.
Yes.
Establishment is hard.
Yes.
It's way easier in business to climb the hill
Yeah.
than it is to be on the top of the hill.
And keep the hill going.
Keep the hill going. Exactly
Yeah,
that.
it's really
so 4-in-1
hard.
sort of suffered from that, and as YouTube and things were coming around, it should have ruled it, right? But it didn't. YouTube wasn't an income stream yet by the time 4-in-1 went out. It was just starting as a platform.
But then how
right?
did 4-in-1 go out? Like, why did, when I was growing up, my first 4-in-1 was number 10, issue number
Okay.
10.
Okay.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
I would, I watched issue number 10 3 times a day, every day.
Right, exactly.
But how did that go? I don't understand. Like, it just lost of popularity because
Loss of popularity.
change of trends.
Change of trends. You know, it moved from VHS to DVD, so at
Yeah.
the end it was DVD only, you know.
Right, DVD
And
only.
video stores were going away, right?
That's right.
Blockbuster was closing down.
Right.
So it's a whole tidal change that
Right.
happened.
Blockbuster
culture.
changing to Netflix.
Right, exactly. And then 401 never had the chance to do that transition because it basically was so established and had so much cost that it fell apart.
Right.
And then it was sold to someone and they didn't make it work after a year, and then they shuttered it.
So the overhead was too high, crushed
Yeah.
them, and then they sold it, and then that person, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, so fascinating because there's so much to learn. It would have been possible if 4-in-1 was like, I guess you're right, because it went under before YouTube was really a revenue
Right.
stream for anybody. When YouTube first started, it was, you were not allowed to put your skateboard content on there.
Right.
You're very looked down upon.
Very looked down upon.
Yeah, interesting.
But that's because we still had to sell the video mindset.
Yeah,
You know?
I see.
Like I'm holding that for the video, and literally
Right.
you would do all your tricks. You'd hold a year's worth of skateboarding for a video.
Right.
Where now it's like, well, it gets out on Instagram right away. And some people, some people will film for a part per se, but it's not a commercially sold piece. It's just something that's out on the internet for you to get, right?
Yeah, to
And
promote.
the minute you put it out in the wild, it's just there. You know, you can't undo that.
Yeah, it's so sad to me though because I
Yeah.
love that history. I love the video parts.
Right.
That's what I would love to go back to somehow. Maybe
Right.
that's just the nostalgia in me of like, we need these brands that make the video part, and then
Well, see, but every skater is they're conditioned by what they started with,
right,
product-wise,
right,
influence-wise, what they want. So a lot of times skateboarders may be like, oh, the 80s were the best, or the 70s. It's like,
Yeah.
now it's the best. You can go public skate parks everywhere,
It's true.
right? You can ride a longboard, a freestyle board, a slalom board, a vert board. Like skateboarding's better than it's ever been.
Yeah, that's a good viewpoint.
Is it what you grew up with? No.
Yes,
But you lost the right to influence it,
right. That's right.
right? Because
That's
the
right.
current generation influences what happens.
Right, right.
You
And
know?
you don't get a say.
They don't get to say. Like, I'm just lucky to be here. Other people don't seem to care about making stuff, so they haven't kicked me out yet, right?
Well, I think that
Yeah.
you've done so good at delivering a high quality product that you've been in business since 1979.
Yeah.
Maybe the product has changed, things have changed, but your product is exceptionally good.
Thank
And
you.
that's why it's still around.
Yep.
That's what I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, the industry goes through these changing cultures. I just find it so interesting because I feel like there's a way to be more at cause over it and help this machine grow
Right.
some way. I feel like I'm the person who never will stop searching for that and keep trying
Right.
to push it. But I think all these histories and the stories is really good.
Yeah, well, the whole inspiration to things, why things happen. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't just get here. It
Right.
didn't just happen. Skateboarding just happened this week, and they built skate parks around the world. You know what it took to get skate parks built as a public entity?
What?
Well, in California, we had to get on the hazardous recreational activities list.
Hazardous recreational activities
Yeah, so we
list?
worked on a project in the 90s with the state to get skateboarding recognized. So you're at a public skate park, and you'll see signage, right? And that signage says you're responsible for your own actions. Well, it was the laws in California letting that happen. Because public skate parks were happening like in Colorado and Oregon, where they're used to going down the hills on skis and snowboards in the winter, right? Like it was happening there quicker than it was in California.
Really? Okay, so for them it was just sort of like, well, you're already doing this.
Right,
It's already crazy enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Go build a skate park, have fun.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
so the
that's
crazy thing
interesting.
is it's lawyer related, right? Because we worked on that in the 90s. The last thing that had been added to the hazardous recreational activities list, and it was like in late 60s, was spelunking.
Spelunky? What's that?
It's cave, research, digging, going in caves.
Oh.
You became your own hazard for it.
That is
right?
terrifying.
So with the city, they actually have a less liability for you being in a skate park with proper signage posted than they do for you skating down the sidewalk. But the minute they put a guard shack on the, and now then it becomes, now they take the liability off.
I see.
So that's where the smart cities are like, just let it be open like this. Yeah, we need a fence so people don't walk into the park,
Right.
right? But we don't need to turn it into a jail.
Yeah, we were talking about that. It's like good that the park is open, it's
Yeah,
public.
this is a beautiful park.
Anybody can come here.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is. I really like this. It's just a place for the community to go. Yeah, and then I started to think, so if we have more skate parks that are publicly accessible, we have more skate shops.
Yeah.
Running a skate shop right now is so, like, shout out to the skate shops.
Oh,
Support your
totally.
local skate shop.
No, well, the reality is that like I've done everything in skateboarding,
Yeah.
but I've never been a pro and I've never been a retailer.
Really?
But pretty much I've done everything else. I've made
Yeah.
trucks, wheels, boards, built ramps, did media, all this kind of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
But I feel like the skate shops are sort of the pillars of the community at this point.
Oh, totally.
You know what I mean? Yeah, if you still have a skate shop right now, like, thank
Right.
you, because you're helping skateboarding to
Right.
exist at all. But this is why I think it's so interesting, because I feel like right now, well, skateboarding is dwindling and it could go away, but I feel like that's how
It
it
will never
felt
go
in the
away.
70s.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's what I want this reality. I want
right.
to
It won't go
understand.
away. And we're not in charge of it. The current generation's in charge of it, and they're going
Right.
to take it the way they see it, right?
Gen Z, let's go.
Yep.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, no problem.
These are the history
More than
lessons.
glad to share.
Yeah.
I love to share. I love to teach.
Professor Schmitt, he loves to share, he loves to teach. Okay, guys, please, we need what you want to know about skateboarding. Please leave it in the comments below. It's very important, because then we can follow up and we can make videos to answer your questions, to answer about the history. There's so much to learn. This guy is a bottomless pit of knowledge, and just like he said, he loves to teach, he loves to share. If we do this effectively, more people will get on skateboards and more people will start and become skateboard enthusiasts like ourselves.
Exactly. Lifetime skateboard enthusiast.
That's right, because you've been skateboarding for a couple years.
Yep, just a few.
How many years?
Over 50.
Over 50 years.
51 years. Yeah.
It's amazing. When I showed up at the park today and he was stretching his foot and he has a whole swollen foot, I'm like, Paul, what happened? He said,
Life.
life. But no, he's
Skateboarding.
like, I was in Paris and I skateboarded for,
15 miles around town one day.
he skateboarded for 15 miles around town. That's legendary. This is the passion that skateboarding is built upon. Well, again, thank you so much. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming.
thank you.
You for sharing.
Honor to share.
And we'll see you again.
Yeah. Let us know your questions and we'll come out and dig up some answers for you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you
Later.
for watching the video. We'll see you in the next one.